started. And you are not late, Dawn. You are on time. Early, even. As soon as we all settle in. So up first this afternoon, we have Maxine Maxed. She's going to be giving the site spent nuclear fuel update and a few other details. And you notice that there's a report in front of you, so you have some goodies. Please note, they are not the same, even though they look almost identical. There's a volume 1 and a volume 2. That's why you have 2 copies in front of you, okay? All right. Maxine, take it away.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm going to try and keep it active and keep you going after lunch. I know we had some good food at lunch, so we're all sleepy. But I'm going to give you an update, and I have a couple surprises, too. Uh-oh, it's not working. Is it on?
No, I failed you. I'm sorry. My fault.
Okay. So the purpose is this is to fulfill a work plan item for Nuclear Materials Committee. These are just some pictures of the facilities we're going to be talking about today. H Canyon, L area, and then that's the basin. That's where the fuel's actually stored underwater. There's some, oops, sorry. Acronym list, I'll try not to use them, but they're ingrained in us, so it's hard not to use them. But there's a cheat sheet for you. So L Basin is where we actually store our spent nuclear fuel. It was converted in the 90s to store all of the fuel at the site because each of the reactors had their own pools. All of it was consolidated in the L area. It's about 3.4 million gallons of water. That's the size of 5 Olympic swimming pools, just so you can get an idea. And it ranges anywhere from 17 to 50 feet deep. Our fuel is stored in bundles, and they're about 12 feet long. Our water is used just for radiation protection for the workers. It's not to keep the fuel cool. We're actually going through a calculation right now that if we lost all the water in the basin, the fuel would remain safe. It's shipped to us dry. It's not going to melt like you've seen in some of the commercial reactors and the accidents that we've had, like at Fukushima. It's not that type of fuel. We do receive foreign research reactor fuel and domestic research reactor fuel. Your domestic types of examples are MIT, MER, which is an acronym, Missouri University Research Reactor is MER. We also get it from NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technologies. That's out of Maryland. So those are our typical DRR. We also get fuel from high flux isotope reactor in Oak Ridge, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So we do store it. It's stored underwater. We do not store dry. We do have limited storage of dry, but it's not what you're typical from commercial. It's in little tiny 55-gallon drums. So we had SRNL do a analysis of the basin to see how long we could actually store this fuel safely. And their analysis showed that we could store the fuel at least additional 50 years. So that was good news. So these are some examples of what our research reactor fuel looks like. You can see it's much smaller than commercial. These are typically about 3 to 4 feet long. They're all different shapes and sizes. We have all different enrichment levels in the basin, ranging from low enriched all the way up to 93% enriched. We do have a capacity for this bundle storage of 3,650 bundles. Today we're at 3,159. I know this says about 3,000. I wasn't sure where we were going to be at the CAB meeting, so I just put an approximation in for you guys. So that shows we're really close to our capacity. We did get approval to process some of our fuel. So we can process up to 1,000 bundles. Is this working? So these are examples. The HYFER fuel, you can see there's an inner and an outer core. We do store those separately, so we have a storage rack system that's different for HYFER, but we consider a core to be equivalent to a bundle whenever we're doing any of our performance measures. We have capacity for 120. Past couple of years I've had to tell you that we were at capacity. Good news is we're not at capacity anymore. We've actually shipped some to the canyon and we have processed 8 cores. So we currently have 108 cores in inventory right now, and the plan is they're actually loading some more to go to the canyon this week. Okay, this just shows you we do have some other fuels that we really don't talk about a lot. We have some stainless and zirc cladded fuels that are not able to be processed through H Canyon as is currently configured. So we do have some of that. It's about 10% by volume what we have in the basin. This is how it's stored in our isolation cans, and that just means it's isolated from the rest of the water in the basin. So if it's usually degraded fuel, cut fuel, you don't want those particles getting into your water and causing corrosion of your good fuel. The picture here of the 70-ton cask, this is actually how we transfer the fuel from L area over to H area. So these are very old casks. I think some of them are dated back to their plates are like 54, but they still work. We had to upgrade the rail cars, but they're what we use on site. And this shows you down here it being loaded in the transfer bay. We only have one transfer bay in L area. That's our hold point for anything, because you can only have one cask in at a time. So you're either going to be loading up the 70-ton or emptying another cask that's in. So we have to basically schedule around that. So this is just an example for you to take with you, because I actually have a video, a brand new video of L area that we're real proud of that you're going to get to see. But this just shows you the process of what we do when we receive a cask. And you're going to hear all about that in the video. So hopefully that works. Video.
The Spent Fuel Project at Savannah River Site is a one-of-a-kind repository for spent research reactor fuel.
The Spent Fuel Project at the Savannah River Site is making the world a safer place. An underwater storage basin contains remaining SRS legacy production reactor materials and other special nuclear material. This storage basin is called the Disassembly Basin because of its use when the facility served as a Cold War-era plutonium production reactor.
The closure of L reactor presented us with an opportunity.
Our facility is the facility that receives the spent nuclear fuel, stores it in the basin.
Today, Spent Fuel Project missions include receipt and storage of aluminum-based nuclear fuel from both foreign and domestic research reactors. Fuel from outside the United States is shipped to L area, supporting the U.S. nuclear non-proliferation policy. Highly enriched uranium fuel is removed from the international market and safely stored at SRS and out of the hands of terrorists. From within the U.S., research reactors such as at MIT and the University of Missouri ship spent fuel to L area for storage. This allows these reactors to continue operating and producing isotopes used for life-saving medical diagnoses and treatments of diseases, including cancer. A third and equally important mission in L area is to transfer fuel in the disassembly basin to H Canyon, the only operating production-scale nuclear chemical separation facility in the United States. There, highly enriched uranium is blended down to low enriched uranium. This is fuel that can be reused in the production of commercial power.
The safety culture is second to none. We see other examples in industry of how things happen on a day-to-day basis, and with the L area, it doesn't.
One of the primary things is that we're worried about the immediate worker protection. The packages that come in are heavily shielded. We place those packages on the water, which is shielding, so our operators can unload these materials without being harmed.
The disassembly basin is made up of 7 interconnected water-filled basins ranging from 17 to 30 feet deep and hold a total of 3.4 million gallons of water. The water is not required to cool the spent fuel assemblies, but rather to shield and protect workers from radiation. One key aspect of safe handling and safe long-term fuel storage involves maintaining strict water chemistry standards. These controls are in place to minimize corrosion and ensure the integrity of the fuels, the bundles, and the basin handling and storage equipment. The transfer bay is the single entry and exit point for all spent nuclear fuel casks. When casks containing spent nuclear fuel arrive at SRS, it is essential to get them safely unloaded and released for use as efficiently as possible. Casks designed to transport the fuel are limited worldwide, and their use is planned in detail years in advance. Once in the transfer bay, the cask is moved using an 85-ton capacity crane. For most cask types, the crane lowers the cask into the L-basin transfer pit, and once submerged, the fuel is removed and placed into buckets. Workers use long-handled tools capable of reaching the irradiated material from above the surface, designed and many fabricated by Savannah River Site personnel. The fuel is then carefully inspected and positively identified before being placed into its approved storage location. The horizontal bundle and bucket storage basin contains a 2-tier storage rack system that can hold a total of 120 high-flux isotope reactor cores from Oak Ridge National Lab in Tennessee. The vertical tube storage basin contains expanded basin storage racks with a capacity for 3,650 bundles of spent nuclear fuel. Once fuel is removed, the cask is raised, rinsed to remove contamination, surveyed, and placed back on its transport vehicle. Fuel transferred from L area to H area is performed using a 70-ton cask. These are moved across the site using the SRS rail system.
The spent fuel team is such an awesome place to work.
The folks that I work with every day are fantastic.
You really build, personal relationships.
You want to support each other, and you want to make sure that you're doing the best job that you can every day.
And you care about them. You want them to go home the same way that they showed up.
Spent fuel project personnel form a highly trained, multidisciplined team with extensive expertise and experience. SRS collaborates with local technical colleges to attract talented employees ready to safely perform this work of worldwide importance. These pros in L area are currently tasked with transferring up to 1,000 fuel bundles and 200 hypercores to H Canyon for processing. This will keep space open for fuel incoming to L Basin until all fuel is processed in H Canyon or shipped off-site and the basin can be decommissioned. L Area's team of dedicated professionals are committed to the safe receipt, storage, and transfer of nuclear fuels and are truly making the world a safer place.
It is a very close-knit family.
It's really a family thing, and everyone looks out for everybody.
With the L area, we have a wide spectrum of people that make our family, just well-rounded. And you just appreciate that.
That's the end of that. Hopefully you liked it. You can see where the enthusiasm comes from. It's not just me, it's the whole team in L area. They actually volunteered to do that. The reason that the video was put together is we do have a lot of new operators coming on board, and they wanted to have a way to train them before they had their clearances and things, so they were filming activities as they went through. And I said, oh, I want one that's just for the public. And so they were able to do that. And you are the first ones to see it outside of Savannah Riverside. So thank you. And I didn't do it. They did it. They did a great job. So, but that gives you an overview. And you don't have to listen to me talk for that long. So disposition of spent nuclear fuel. That's our goal. What do we have to do? Right now we have H Canyon. It's the only one in the United States, as the video talked about. We can actually take that fuel, we dissolve it, we remove the uranium. The uranium can then go off to TVA or a fuel fabricator for use to produce electricity. All of the fission products, any plutonium, any of the bad stuff left over goes to the tank farms and over to Jim's folks to handle. We've talked about the AROD in there. We have actually shipped 200 bundles and processed 200 bundles. We've shipped eight cores over that have been dissolved. We went into our steam outage in H Canyon, so they should be coming out of that, and they'll start back up with some more HYFER that's going to be dissolved. And then we are also going to start dissolving some more bundle fuel towards the end of the month, 1st of June. And at that time will be the first time H Canyon has 3 activities ongoing at one time. They'll be dissolving HYFER fuel in one dissolver, dissolving the bundle fuel in another dissolver, and they'll still be accepting the liquid waste from Canada. That's a first for us in H Canyon, so we're actually making progress and trying to be more efficient. We talked about the stainless and zirc. About 10% of our inventory can't go through H Canyon as it's currently configured. The only other option you have for spent fuel is dry storage. The problem with our fuel is that it's aluminum based and it's HEU. Commercial fuel is at the 4.95% enrichment level. As I said, our fuel can go up to 93% enriched. That's an issue for safety, security. So there's also issues of whether you can actually technically dry the fuel so that you don't have it corroding away from some, they call them oxyhydroxide layers. It's basically hydrogen and oxide that forms on the outside of the aluminum. So we have studies going on now between Idaho and Savannah River National Labs trying to figure out how much grows, what does it do, could you actually dry store aluminum clad fuel? We don't know the answer to that yet. Our scientists are working on it. And as Don always says, dry storage is not a disposition path. It just puts it in a form ready to go somewhere else. This is a chart just to give you the flow of how the fuel comes in. Sorry, this is so hard to read. That's the Port of Charleston. A lot of our foreign fuel comes through to us by ship, and it'll come through the Port of Charleston. We do have some that comes by truck. From the port, it can either come by truck or by rail, depending on what's coming in. Gets in the L Basin, and then we put it into the 70-ton cask to ship it over to H Canyon to dissolve it. And you see there's the waste products that go down to the high-level waste system into a glass waste storage building, and eventually to a federal repository. The uranium then goes to our outside facilities, gets down blended to LEU, low-enriched uranium, and then it's sent off-site to a fuel fabricator where it can be reused. So H Canyon's a huge recycling plant. So as we've talked about in the video, it's the only one that we have in the United States. If we lose H Canyon, we have less capability than North Korea, Pakistan, and a lot of third world countries. So the United States is very keen on trying to keep H Canyon going. I think we've talked about all of this. There's the next slide. I'll take us through these. So this is just a schematic on what happens in H Canyon. It's a huge chemistry project. And this shows you the different fuel, bundled fuel versus the HYFER fuel. Goes into the dissolver with nitric acid. Then it goes into head end where you start separating out pieces. Then you go through the cycles. Again, more separation. First cycle, second cycle, and then once it's to a point where you've gotten all the uranium and all the byproducts are out of it, you go down to the blend down portion. And these are just cheat sheets for you to have throughout the year. This is our inventory curves of capacity, and L Basin is very important to us. We had to look forward for the projections of what could come to us. That's how we got approval to process the 1,000 bundles and the 200 HYFER cores, because when we looked at the projections, we were going to run out of space. and nobody wanted to put the money into actually increasing our storage. They wanted to get rid of the fuel. So that's how we got approval to do the AROD amounts. This is our bundled fuel. This is our capacity line, that 3650. This shows you where our capacity is projected to be. And this shows you bundles coming in is in the dashed, bundles going out is in the green. So you can see we keep it down below our limit, whereas before we were going to be 1,000 bundles over. And this is the same for Heifer. It's a different rack storage system, so it's got a different chart as well. Shows you we work the inventory down to 0, and then it increases again. Again, this is the Heifer coming in. This is the Heifer going out. We're not sure if we're going to make 10 coming in this year, but that's our goal. We have to work with Office of Science on that and what they can actually physically send, because the cores come to us one at a time. We ship to the canyon 4 at a time, so we're going to far exceed their capacity shipped to us. So our accomplishments so far in 18, we received 8 FRR casks. We have received 2 DRR casks through April. We've transferred 3 casks of Heifer over to the canyon for processing as of April 30th. We anticipate 3 more casks going over to H Canyon of SNF before the end of the fiscal year. We continue to receive the target residue material in H Canyon. That's in a liquid form. And then we have processed the 8 cores through April, as we said. So our progress on our amended record of decision, the 1,000 bundles and 200, we show the 200 and the 8, and that's through April. So we're safely storing the fuel in El Basin. It's safely transported around the country and in the world. You have to follow the DOT and the NRC requirements for transportation. We are processing in H Canyon, and we are working on trying to get a departmental decision on the remainder of fuel that will be in El Basin after the AROD is done. So that's where we stand on that. Now, before I end, you all have the little system plans that James told you about. That is what we talked about in January. That's the official system plan. It's similar to the high-level waste system plan, only it's for nuclear materials, and it takes us through our life cycle. And I know it's very hard to read, but in the back, there's a cheat sheet. And it takes you through what's going on in the canyon, what's going on in L area, what's going on in K area. And the volumes are set up to be uranium is volume 1, plutonium is volume 2. So we're very proud of our system plan. It's new, so there are going to be some changes that happen. We expect to have to update it once a year, but it does give you an estimate of what has to be done to get to the end of the life cycle. Now I'll take questions.
Okay. No, we're going to start with Jim over here.
Maxine, some of the bundles are not aluminum clad. What's the options for dealing with that, and are there more of them coming?
Okay, so right now we do not take anything that's not aluminum. Okay. This was prior years. Some of it is actually some of our own site fuel from the Hector. It was a test reactor that we had on site. So your options are dry storage, which Idaho is currently doing with a lot of their fuel. They know how to dry store this non-aluminum. Or you have to reconfigure the canyon with some kind of system that would, like a chop leach is what you'll typically hear they say. It's a system that would allow you to chop the fuel up so you can get the acid in and dissolve all of the actual fuel. The problem with that is all of our tanks are stainless tanks. So in order to dissolve it, you potentially could dissolve the tank. So it's not an easy proposition to try and reconfigure H Canyon to do it.
Thank you.
Don? Down.
Dawn Gillis Cab. Thank you, Maxine, and thank you for the system plan.
You're
Yay. Welcome. The cheat sheet you show on your big chart there, you cannot read it in here. So I don't know if it'd be possible for us to get a blown up of it event somewhere along the line. I mean,
I know it's hard to read. Even when it's blown up, it's hard to read off of this thing. So
yeah. So
I can look. Even if I put it on 11 by 17, you still can't read it.
Still can't read it.
No.
Maybe put it on a couple pages. Anyway.
We can look at that. We'll look at trying to break it up.
Okay. But the other thing is I know that the current AROD was to not have to increase the storage in the basin. And I know you're working on trying to get the rest. The approval these days, and it should have been in the past, but it wasn't, to continue processing and to do things faster, better, whatever, is actually empty basin. And that's the big key, is to get out of the basin without doing dry storage. But anyway, that is just, me harping and.
No, I understand. And one of the things I should say in the system plan, you're going to see a couple of different options. You're going to see a min-safe case, you're going to see an integrated life cycle estimate case, and then you're going to see a full operations case. So the system plan takes you through those three options.
Okay, and I know as people read this, there's going to be a lot more questions, because one of the first things it says in the introduction is it's written assuming you know something about the process. So, did you see that?
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean.
Yeah, it was not done for the public, I'm
You're
afraid.
right. Yeah, it says, plan assumes the reader is familiar with the systems and processes discussed. And you keep the cab in the, basically, I don't know if that's enough, but anyway, there should be lots of questions generated on this, so thank you.
Okay.
David?
Dave Isley, cab. Does the Heifer cask have any certificate issues, or is it good indefinitely?
So we don't have, so our on-site 70-ton casks do not meet DOT requirements. We could not put them on a public road.
I'm talking about the dog bone, the Heifer cask.
Oh, yes, they do. The GE 2000 cask.
Yes.
Yes, that meets all of the NRC requirements. It is certified, it's usable, it's just gone through an annual maintenance, I believe. So it's good to go.
It's good indefinitely.
Yeah, I think you get like a 5-year period on any certificate that you get from the NRC. You just have to renew. It's just a renewal. Same thing with our LWT casks. It's just a renewal process.
Thank you. Nice movie.
Thank you. You should recognize some of those folks.
Gil?
Maxine, thanks for the system plans. Do they include any fiscal numbers in there?
Yes, there's numbers in the back.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't have a chance to go through it
Yeah,
yet.
in the attachments in both volumes, there's a attachment of dollars and also FTEs.
How far out do they go?
So the lifetime.
Lifetime. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, who's next?
That's it? Did y'all go to sleep after lunch?
Maybe.
Just so good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, wait.
What?
We got one more. Last minute. Tom French.
You spoke too soon. Sorry. So last month we heard the report from the working group on spent fuel, and does this address all the issues as far as we're concerned?
Working group. Oh, you mean from the National Waste Transportation Review Board?
Yes.
So the system plan, we do not, the system plan uses the approach of processing. So for us to get out of L-base and everything, the system plan is looking at processing. You're going to hear the system plan will also talk about the swap, where we take the stuff that we can't process in H Canyon and we ship it to another site like Idaho, who has that capability.
Okay.
So that's what you'll see in the system plan.
All right, great. Thank you.
Gil, did you have another one? Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay. Is that it for real now? Thank you, Maxine.
Thank you.
For the president's budget.
Good afternoon. John Lopez, the Director of Integration and Planning, and I'm here to talk about Gil's favorite subject, and that's the budget. So, what I'm here to do is talk to you about the process that we go through to develop our fiscal year budgets, and hopefully educate you guys on the steps that we take all the way through beginning to plan the budget all the way through the budget being executed by an act of Congress. So as we talked about before, we start working on our budgets 2 years prior to when they're actually enacted. So this chart kind of shows the process that we go through, or the timetable. Inside here is the current fiscal year that we're working on. So here we are in May, and we're executing to our fiscal year 18 budget. The next circle represents the 19 budget, and then the outer circle represents the fiscal year 20 budget. So where are we today? Well, here we are in May, and we're executing to our 18 budget. The fiscal year 19 budget, that came out in February with the president's release of the budget. Now Congress is working the 19 budget through the appropriations committees and to hopefully pass a spending bill by October 1st. That hasn't happened since 1997. This year, President Trump has told Congress that he wants a bill on his desk by October 1st. And I know that Congress is actively working on that. And the reason why I know is because we're getting questions from both the House and Senate committees, from the staffers there, requesting information about our fiscal year 19 budget. So it's very encouraging to know that Congress is actually working on a budget, and it would be a surprise, a much needed surprise, or great surprise, if we actually received a budget by October 1st. Last year, we didn't get our budget until 6 months into the fiscal year. So we're working off of, when you're doing that, you're in a continuing resolution and you're working off of your fiscal year 17 appropriation until you're waiting till you get your fiscal year 18 numbers. And it's not an efficient way to do business. We're really holding back on a lot of work. One of the big impacts this year was salt disposal unit number 7. That is a line item project that we requested in fiscal year 18, and you cannot start a new project when you're under a continuing resolution. So that project was actually delayed 6 months until we got an appropriation bill in March. So if we get a bill by October 1st, that is a great thing for the site. So Congress is working on the 19 budget right now. And so where are we? Right now, we're currently working on our fiscal year 20 budget. We have not received a target yet from OMB, but headquarters has given the sites a target to work to. We've put together a briefing package. Actually, our new site manager is going to give that briefing to his boss this Thursday to talk about what we can and cannot do with our fiscal year 20 target that we've received. So once the EM1 hears from all the sites, once we get a target from OMB, we'll submit our final fiscal year 20 budget and to be released by the president this coming February. So every February, the president releases his budget to Congress, and that's due to come out. The fiscal year 20 budget will be due the first week in February of next year. We've talked about this before and how we get our money at the site. It really comes in buckets, okay? Congress, there's control points. Congress gives us money at this level, at the risk management operations, then we get it at PBS 20, PBS 100, and PBS 14. And then OMB further breaks down this control point here into 5 new PBSs. And they put what they call Category B restrictions on those dollars. Once Congress gives us the money at the risk management operations level, OMB then breaks that down to those 5 different PBSs, and they put a Category B restriction on it, which means we cannot move money around between any of these PBSs unless we go back to OMB and request permission to do that. If we want to move money around between these 3 or that level there, that has to go back to Congress and actually request Congress to move money around within the site, within those control levels. So once we get our money, we're very restricted on how we can spend it and what scope we can spend it on. Each one of the PBSs then is broken down into these different categories, which I'm going to talk about here next. So when we develop our integrated priority list, so headquarters has given us a target for fiscal year 20, and we develop a priority list. Every PBS develops a list of scope, a list of activities that they can do within their target, and then we also have over-target scope. Those items are broken out into or grouped into 4 different categories. There's support of safe operations, which is really what we call MinSafe operations. Operational support, regulatory cleanup, and Brian Hennessy was here this morning, and he talked about our regulatory requirements that we've signed up to. So we group our IPL or categorize IPL with those regulatory commitments, and then we also, the last category is making progress. So our MinSafe activities are really those activities needed to maintain facilities or systems in a state of operational readiness, including our safeguards and securities at the site. We spend over $100 million securing the site, and that's considered part of the MinSafe operations. Next category is operational support, and these are activities that are not included in the other activities as far as making progress or regulatory, but there's things in there like we support EPA and DHEC each year through grants. That's included as part of operational support. Site infrastructure, if we spend any money on infrastructure activities, that goes under operational support. And then the last category there is any land management activities. So we pay, the Forest Service is at our site. They maintain all the forest there and all the secondary roads for the site. That's paid for out of these lands management activities. And then you have the Savannah River Ecology Lab, which is also part of land management. The next category are the cleanup activities to support our compliance milestones. And like I said, this is what Brian was talking about this morning. We identify every scope of work in our IPL and the cost of that activity to meet each one of our compliance milestones. That's categorized in our IPL, and then that's communicated up to headquarters whenever we submit our IPL for inclusion in the budget. Then last but not least, whatever money is left over after we fund all those other activities is really what we call making progress. This is processing fuel in the canyons, receiving fuel, any D&D that we do that's not tied to a regulatory compliance milestone. We're doing 235F deactivation. That's not regulatory required, so that's grouped into that making progress activity. So what is the process that we go through in order to develop our budget? One of the first steps I left off there was we are required to solicit input from our stakeholders on your priorities for fiscal year 20. So we have solicited input from the CAB, which you guys have given us, what your priorities are for fiscal year 20. And then we've also solicited input from EPA and South Carolina DHEC, and they've given us their priorities for fiscal year 20. Then the Office of Management Budget gives EM a target for the planning year, which we have not received yet. Headquarters then breaks down that target to the individual sites. At Savannah River site, our target is broken down into 8 PBSs, and then we establish priorities for each one of those PBSs. Like I said, those PBSs are broken out into individual IPL items, and if you look at our IPL for any given fiscal year, there's about 40 to 50 work activities that we actually have categorized in our IPL submission. Our funding requirements include both the direct cost to perform the work and then any indirect costs. There's things like pension. We have indirect costs for maintaining the roads. We call it landlord services and maintaining administrative facilities. All of those indirect costs are then added to the direct costs as part of our budget process. Many of our activities are considered mandatory. Our security and MinSafe operations. We have to fund those scopes before we start allocating money to any of the other making progress scopes. As I said earlier, there's always more work to do than what we have in our targets. So when we identify our budgets for headquarters, we identify both what would be funded in target, and then we also have over target work scope. This Thursday, when we make our presentation to headquarters, we will identify what scope that we're going to do within our target and what scope we can do over target. So headquarters will consider that whenever they develop the individual targets for each site. before we submit the budget to our final budget to OMB, all the sites get together and we talk about what's in target and what's over target, and then the final targets are established for the president's budget in February. So here's a budget table that I'd kind of like to go through because there's some changes that have happened in fiscal year 18 that I want to point out. In the past, PBS 12 and PBS 11 were always two separate PBSs. This year, for the first time, those two PBSs are combined into one PBS. And that's really a good win for the site here because, you know, Maxine's program of the nuclear materials, it's really one big program that's very integrated into itself. Having two separate control points for that was sometimes difficult to manage. So Congress understood that, OMB understood that, so this year they've allowed us to combine those two PBSs into one PBS. They've created a new, OMB actually did this, Congress didn't do this. OMB created a new PBS called Infrastructure and Land Management. There were scopes of work that were done, this was typically done under PBS 13. OMB wanted PBS 13 just to be solid waste, so they created this separate PBS, and that's where we broke out any general infrastructure type projects, capital type infrastructure projects that we have going on, and any land management activities. So the only capital general infrastructure project we have going on right now is the A Area Firewater Project for SRNL. That is a capital asset project to replace a fire tank and a pump system for SRNL. That is included in this PBS. And then also any support that we have for the Forest Service and SREL is also included in that PBS. Also included in that PBS, this is a new line item project we have. I don't know if any of you have ever toured our Emergency Operations Center at the site. It's located in the basement of the old admin facility. It's mold infested, it leaks, it's a dungeon. So this year, starting in 18, we actually got authorization. There's not a lot of money, but Congress actually authorized us to go ahead with planning our new operations center. Also new this year, we proposed creating a separate PBS. All the sites broke out their cybersecurity into a separate PBS. Congress questioned they didn't question why we were breaking out cybersecurity, but they did question why are you needing a separate PBS for that. So when they enacted the budget for fiscal year 18, they told us to combine PBS 25 into PBS 20. So that's why you see the big increase between 142 and 159. That's because these cybersecurity costs moved up into PBS 20. So there's a lot of focus on cybersecurity. Our site's done a great job identifying what those requirements are. There's a lot of new requirements that have come out because of all the cyber breaches. Now that's going to be it was part of our indirect costs across the site, and now it's going to be part of the PBS 20, where it's easier to track and identify the scope for cybersecurity. So what's changed between our FY18 request and what we actually got? The good news is Congress, for the first time in a long time, actually gave the site an additional $23 million, more than what we asked for in our request. Most of those dollars went to the liquid waste program, which has everybody, the CAB, DHEC, EPA, is all recognized as what our #1 priority is for the site. So we actually did get a nice plus up in fiscal year 18 of almost $40 million for cybersecurity, for liquid waste. They did decrement the Saltstone Disposal Unit project. That was primarily because we didn't get the money till later in fiscal year 18, so there's no way we could have spent $40 million in fiscal year 18. So they decremented that project by $10 million and moved those monies to the liquid waste program, where we could execute scope in fiscal year 18. So fiscal year 19 request, our fiscal year 19 request, good news here, almost $185 million increase between what we actually got in 18 and what we requested. Of course, we don't know what we're actually going to get. Congress is working on that right now. But as you can see, the biggest majority of those dollars, of the 184, went to the liquid waste programs. Sonny's going to give you a talk to break that down on what we're going to do with those additional dollars. But this is a huge win for the site, getting this additional dollars. I talked about this yesterday. Those additional dollars are also going to fully fund our pension in fiscal year 19. Our pension costs between fiscal year 18 and 19 went up about, I think it was $40 million for the EM program. So 184, or 40 of this 184 is going to pay for the additional pension payments. The rest of it is going to actually execute scope. I think that's all I had on that one. All right, and we talked about this yesterday. I thought it was worth mentioning again. This is our mountain chart for the pension contribution. As I talked about here, our pension between fiscal year 19 and 20 went up, well, actually was $20 million for EM here. But as you can see, we have a huge challenge over the next several years here on paying for our pension, and I think you guys are going to help us address that with your recommendation. Questions?
Let's start with Don. Yeah,
Dawn Gillis Cab. I've got a few I have to go look for. Excuse me. Okay. Oh, that one was answered. I knew you were going to combine 11 and 12, and you covered that later, so that was good. Okay, on slide 6, we talk about site infrastructure support activities. You have PBS 11, 14C, and 42. So is PBS 11 and 14C also going to continue to be taxed for infrastructure, and then 14C is going to cover other infrastructure? I'm not sure how that was working.
No, this is what we call inside the fence infrastructure.
Okay.
So if Nuclear Materials needs an infrastructure project, right now they're replacing their electrical system out there. What's it called? This, not the switch boxes, the, give me the words.
Switchgear for K&L.
Right. That would be categorized under PBS 11's priorities. It would be categorized as operational support. Liquid waste has the same thing in 14C, as they're doing infrastructure to support the liquid waste project. That's categorized under operational support.
And then 42 would be like roads and bridges kind of thing.
That's correct.
Okay. Gil, got one for you on this. On page 8, where it talks of scope, the third bullet, I'm not sure exactly how we can see this. It says, you know, the IPL contains 40 activities versus what we look at is just that we look at it at PBS, the CAB looks at it at PBS level essentially.
Right.
And Gil, you were talking about that we need to get deeper into when we talk about IPL. Can we see those 40 activities in the future?
I believe the last CAB meeting, we gave you what the 19...
Did we?
Yeah.
Okay, so we had that? Okay, because
when we were in Hilton Head, they gave us a very detailed list.
Yes.
Okay, because I don't remember us as a CAB looking at higher than just the PBS level. So
we gave
what
you
you're saying is
breakout.
Gil, I think what you're saying is we didn't do that we need to do that more. Okay,
Correct.
got it.
We have more information now as we move into next year.
Yep, okay. Okay, and, okay, that's it. Thank you.
Let's slide over to Dave.
Thank you. John, we get a lot of good presentations, but there's nothing better than a budget presentation. Thank you.
Here, here.
Cash is king.
On the slide that you were talking about with the pension contribution, you said the total for FY 2019 is $177 million. And I thought you said yesterday that that was at the 80% level, which is I guess the minimum that is required under the ERISA law. Is that correct?
That is correct.
what would it take approximately to get that to 100%?
Well, you'd have to take all of these contributions from now all the way. We're not 100% funded until 2028. So if you got all these contributions up front, now you would have some gains on all of that if you got it up front, but you're talking, over $1 billion to get as a one-time infusion of funds to get the pension to 100%. So
Okay.
you'd have to have all these contributions here, less any gains that you would have. If you got all this money in 19, you would have some gains on it over the years.
Okay. And then on the budget table slide on slide 9, you said that 11C and 12 were combined. The new PBS for that now is 11C?
That's correct.
Okay. And then back on the slide where you talked about the, slide 8, you talked about the scope prioritization process. And so OMB gives their target to EM, and then you said that headquarters breaks down the OMB target and provides the sites with their planning target. Who owns that process? Is that what they call EM5, and is that a collaborative process to get those targets out to like SRS?
Well, EM owns it,
Okay.
but EM1 owns it, okay? But yes, EM5 then works with EM1 and helps break out those targets by individual site.
Okay.
So once we get those targets, then EM1 will meet with each one of the sites, and then we'll all say what we can and can't do, and then EM1 will make adjustments to those targets and say, okay, these are your final targets, this is what we're going with, and then we develop our narratives and impacts to those final targets.
And then the request that's sent to Congress is at the SRS level. So the for your FY19 request for Savannah River site, that would be by PBS.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Doug?
Doug Howard Cap. John, thanks for your presentation. I have two questions for you. The first one is, what is the advantage of combining the PBSs?
The nuclear materials program, well, Maxine, do you want to answer that? Go ahead.
I will if you want me to. Maxine Maxted, DOE. So the benefit that we have is in prior years, if we got funded to run the canyon processing, I may have not have gotten funded in PBS 12 to ship the material over. By combining it, we do away with those interactions because it's all in one. We get to manage at the level that makes the most sense for the two programs.
In both DOE and the contractor, the nuclear materials is one organization. They don't have two separate organizations for spent fuel and one for processing. It's one organization. Maxine manages both of those programs. So it's just more efficient to have one funding source than two funding sources.
Do you have any more PBSs in mind that you may think about doing the same thing with in the future?
Well, every once in a while, everybody keeps kicking out a separate PBS for SRNL, and that's been kicked around quite a bit. Disadvantage of that is that right now, SRNL is paid for out of our indirects. The management and operations, or maintenance and operations account is paid for out of our indirects. NNSA pays 25% of our indirects. So NNSA is not using 25% of our lab, but they're paying 25% of the management or maintenance and operations costs for the lab. So if we created a separate PBS for SRNL, that would mean EM would be solely responsible for paying for SRNL, and then NNSA wouldn't be paying nothing for it. That's kind of happened with this year with cybersecurity. Cybersecurity was paid for out of indirects. NNSA is paying part of our indirects. Well, now that this is all one PBS for the site, now NNSA is right in fiscal year 18 is not contributing anything for cybersecurity. EM is paying for all of that.
Thank you.
But other than that, I'm not aware of any other PBSs. We'll create new PBSs as we have new line item projects like SDU 8 and 9 is a new line, I didn't mention that earlier, that's a new line item project that was authorized in fiscal year 18. So that's really what we call a sub-PBS under PBS 14. But other than that, I can't think of any other PBSs we'd want to create.
Gil?
Here, Dave. I agree. Love to talk about the budget. Thank you for pointing out 14C and how SWPF and SUs are priority. With what we've, with the contractor and the valves and everything going on, is the budget still? Do we still see that as a good number moving forward to get SWPF up and going?
So what we did in fiscal year 19, the SWPF line item project had a $130 million need in, this was prior to all this happened. Their budget profile had $130 million in fiscal year 19.
Okay.
What we did is anticipating that they were going to start up at the beginning, at December of 18, we split that between SWPF and we put the other $65 million up here in liquid waste. We just briefed Congress last week that there's a delay on SWPF, and so Congress has asked us then, do we need to take some of this money out of liquid waste and put it back in the SWPF? The answer to that is yes, okay. And we are putting a request to Congress right now to move money from the request, or from 14C into the SWPF.
Okay, and so with I didn't see it, but you spoke about it's a special line item request for SDU 7. Mm-hmm. Is that something when we get to SDU 8 and 9? I see it on the up here. Is it something that we'll cross that bridge when we get there if we have to? Because like right now we're
as far as delaying the
well, I mean we have the numbers there for SDU 8 and 9.
Right.
But when 7's completed, are we going to have to go back and do the same thing for 8 as we did for 7?
No, we don't anticipate the SWPF delay is going to be a multi-year thing. So we're still confident that we're going to need to be building 2 SDUs at the same time. Okay. So there's no plans right now to adjust our 19 requests for the SDUs, and actually for our 20 requests, fiscal year 20 requests, we have not delayed any SDU work at all. Okay. We want to have that infrastructure in place now. I'd rather be sitting there rather than having SWPF delayed because we're waiting for SDUs to be built. So we want to have those in place and built now.
And it's kind of just a little bit off the path here. Is there a way for us to know what the approximate percentage is of the budget that goes to human resources?
Goes to human resources?
So it goes to salary, benefits?
Actually, none of this budget goes to human resource, to pay for DOE salaries. You talking about contractors?
Yes.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm sure that's available from the contractors. We could get it for, what you talking about fringe? What's their fringe rate, or?
It's an approximate, yeah. I mean, yeah. So basically, when we look at 100, well, I mean, I'm going to use round numbers, John, but if we're talking about 1.5 billion, and it's going to the contractors. I'm not counting DOE employees, but how much of that number is actually going to healthcare, pension, 401, 403B, or whatever it is, and actual salary? So what's that? How much is actually going into the employees, rightfully so, and how much is going to?
I'll say that 75% of our budget is people.
That was the number I'm looking for.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
75% of the budget is people.
Yes.
Jim?
Yeah, Jim Gale, CAB. One of the things that we'll be dealing with later on is the recommendations on pension. One of the parts of that is a recommendation that a separate PBS for pension funding be established. There are obviously impacts in the way the numbers are run. From your perspective, what do you see as possible consequences if we were able to do that?
Last year we considered that. The decision was made not to request that, and here's the danger. Is my pension costs are going up, and I'm under a continuing resolution. It's like this year, I would have been stuck at fiscal year 17 levels, okay, when my pension costs are going up. I would not have been able to make my required pension payments for the first 6 months of 18 because I'm still held at my fiscal year 17 levels. And because of the way our pension is going up so much each year and the way that things are happening with these continuing resolutions, you run the risk. We've had full year continuing resolutions. So if your pension goes up $50 million from one year to the next, and you're under a continuing resolution at last year's level, you have no way of paying those pension costs for the year. So that is a major risk factor of having a separate PBS. Another advantage of not having a separate PBS, in the past we've proposed a pension number for a fiscal year. Like fiscal year 19, our pension was, when we prepared the 19 budget, it was at $201 million. Well, now our projection for pension is only at $177 million. So if those extra dollars are sitting out there in a PBS, you know what Congress is going to do, or OMB, they're going to snatch that up. Now, because that's part of our indirects, that money can stay at the site. It's less visible and it stays at the site. So we're actually getting ready to submit a report to Congress. They've asked us to submit a report to them on our pension plan. That's being finalized right now. It's be going up to headquarters here in a week, and I think we have by June, some date in June 21st, that we actually have to submit that report to Congress. So there's a lot of visibility on the Savannah River site's pension plan right now.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, John.
Thank you.
So I'm looking around the table, and I know that we have a break scheduled for 2:30, but that's in another 30 minutes. And I'm looking around at everybody, and you guys don't look like you're disengaged and like you need a break. Can we, Sonny, do you mind going a little bit early? Would you guys want to keep the budget train rolling? Yeah, she's ready to go. You guys want to keep it going? Yeah. Let's let her do her presentation, and then we'll take the break afterwards, okay? Sonny, you get mic'd up real quick. Everybody, if you need to take a stretch, just stand up and stretch. Don't leave the room if you don't have to. Charles is taking advantage of it. Yes, that's my man. Very quickly. Those of you who are leaving, come on back.
For Jim Falk, your DDFO in the Waste Disposition Program. I will be presenting to you today exciting news about what is looking up for us as far as budget is concerned. John Lopez presented to you just now increases, and we are one of those lucky recipients. And in good times, because we are getting ready here to ramp up tremendously, and we are ready to pull the trigger. So
We are giving this presentation to you as part of the work plan agreements with the Waste Management Committee. And I gave you a list of acronyms in the front page. Hopefully, just like Maxine said, I'll try not to use them, but they are like embedded in our brains. So I figured that I would remind you of what the liquid waste program is all about. A lot of you came to the tour a couple, 3 weeks ago, and I just want to make sure that we keep in mind what we're talking about. As you may have seen before, we have a great inventory of liquid waste that we need to get rid of, actually remove from waste tanks and disposition of it in a safe manner. And as you see, we have 3 different kinds of waste: sludge, salt cake, and supernatant. And the volume is divided really greatly between the salt waste and the sludge. The sludge is a small amount. It's about 2.8 million gallons. And the rest of the waste that we have in inventory is salt waste, and it's about 32 million gallons for a total of just about 35 million gallons. Right now, we're talking about 261 million curies that we need to take care of. What is important about this is that salt supernatant is basically in a liquid state, and the salt cake is really that salt crystallized, and it requires water to be able to dissolve that salt cake. We generally speaking use a ratio of 3 to 1, so we need about 3 gallons of water for every gallon of salt cake to be able to dissolve it. So that's why you hear all the time that SWPF, or Salt Waste Processing Facility, will be processing 110 million gallons, and that is the reason, because we have to dissolve all that salt cake, about 16 million gallons of it, and we add about 3 gallons of water for every gallon to be able to dissolve it in the tank farms. Liquid waste program, real quick. Just wanted to remind you, we have received the legacy waste from the canyons, and that is a nuclear materials program that Maxine speaks to you about. And we have received all that waste into the tank farms. We have 51 tanks in 2 tank farms. Right now, we have 43 tanks active, and we have closed 8. And we have like the 35 million gallons that I just spoke to you about. The idea here is to, when we talk about treatment, we're talking about removing the high activity components out of the waste. That means all the actinides like the plutonium, uranium, strontium, the cesium, all those highly radioactive elements out of our waste. And then after we decontaminate all that waste, that volume goes to a different place. The high activity components go to DWPF, and that's where we vitrify and put in canisters, stainless steel canisters in glass form, and they are temporarily stored in glass waste storage buildings. And then we put sludge in those canisters, and we also remove the cesium and the strontium out of the salt waste, either in ARPMCU or the salt waste processing facility, which is getting ready here to start up in the near future. Those highly radioactive components, the cesium and the strontium, that are removed in either of these processes, go to DWPF. Then the greatest volume, which is the decontaminated salt solution coming out of these two processes, will go into Saltstone Disposal Facility, where that stream gets grouted and deposited into the Saltstone Disposal Units, which is a permanent disposal on site. As you see, we in this disposition salts and disposal units, we're going to be housing or disposing of much less than 1% of all the radionuclides that we have in the waste. We have also a third process of salt processing called the tank closure system removal. This is technology that we are getting ready to demonstrate. We're going to start in the fall, and we'll be talking about that in a little bit. So this is basically the program that we're speaking about. Just to recap, the end state of the waste is going to be either in a glass log in stainless steel canisters that will be temporarily stored in the glass waste storage building, or it's going to be in the salt and disposal facility. That's permanent disposal for the decontaminated salt solution. And we have a small stream that goes into the creek through the evaporation process. Just so everybody keeps in mind, all our facilities in the liquid waste program are closely related, and they are closely integrated. So that means that we cannot be working on just one portion and make the progress that we need to be making without working all the other gears. So we do we have the waste storage, and then we have to remove the waste and separate the salt and operate the facilities to grout in saltstone. And at the same time, we have to be working the sludge side. And as we remove that sludge and we send it to DWPF, then that's how the canisters are produced. And only then, when we remove the waste out of the tanks, is when we can actually take care of cleaning the tanks and to do the tank closure. Let's see. Any questions? So let's talk about FY18 for just a minute. FY18, as you know, we had a continuing resolution until March of this year, and it was challenging. We wanted to make a lot of progress to get ready for salt waste processing facility startup, and we were in the FY18 omnibus budget, we got a plus up. Oops. We got a plus up of net $29.8 million. You saw that it was $39 million in John Lopez's slide. And for us, because SDU 7 was reduced by $10 million, and that was added to our plus up. The thing is that for us, for scope, the net is $29.8 million, $9.4 million went into the indirects. So that $30 million came at a very good time for us, because in FY17 we had a shortfall of about $49 million. So we were really falling behind getting ready for the SWPF project, the Salt Waste Processing Facility project, when they start up for that operation. So now we have the opportunity to catch up and make the progress we need to make to be ready for when that operation starts. So at this particular point, you see that our omnibus was the $817 million. What actually goes to the program, liquid waste program for scope, is $637 million. Out of that, we pay also the indirects. We buy services from the M&O contract, the SRS, etc. But basically, for the liquid waste program, we have the goals of producing 50 canisters this year in FY18, processing about 500,000 gallons of salt solution out of ARP MCU. That's actinide removal process, modular caustic site solvent extraction unit. That's a mouthful. but that's why we call it ARPMCU. That's where we process the salt, and this is the alternative process until salt waste processing facility comes online, the interim processing. We also have the goal, and we are scheduling to initiate the demonstration of the tank closure system removal technology in the fall. This is the alternative salt processing that I spoke to you in the flow chart at the beginning. And this is in direct response to dialogue with the Department of Health and Environmental Control for South Carolina, DHEC, and we agreed that we were going to work that process to help accelerate salt processing in our program. We also have an FFA commitment of bulk waste removal efforts for Tank 10. We're using Tank 10, the removal of waste, the waste that will be removed out of Tank 10 will be used to demonstrate TICR, what we call TICR, tank closure system removal. And so completing that milestone, completing that effort is going to be dependent upon the demonstration for TICR. We have completed already the sonar demonstration, and you received a presentation by Jeff Bentley last time. It was about the technology to map the residuals in a tank that turns out to be that the technology works, but it is challenging for us because of all the interference in our tanks. But that demonstration is complete. As far as Tank 15 FFA BWRE commitment, bulk waste removal efforts commitment, that has already been met, and that commitment is complete. We have also we're making great progress in achieving what we need to do in liquid waste program to support the first year of operations of salt waste processing facility, and that includes the initial tie-ins with the facility are complete. We are working diligently in the integration activities with all the other liquid waste facilities. We had to do some upgrades and modifications, like in the defense waste processing facilities, saltstone facility, and in the tank farms to be able to make the ties and upgrade the processes so we can actually support a 9 million gallon processing rate for SWPF, for the salt waste processing facility. So some of those activities are still ongoing. As far as waste removal activities to prepare the feed for salt waste processing facility, that's also ongoing. And we're working a few tanks this year in FY18 to support that, to get ready for it. So now, with the President's budget, our President's budget is about $100 million more than what we had in FY18. When you look at the liquid waste program number, in FY18 is 637, now it's 740. So now we're getting serious. This year in FY18, we're expecting to do a significant ramp up in all of our activities, getting ready to operate as the salt waste processing facility. And like John Lopez was telling you before, not to be distracted with the challenges that the project is having, and they're going to be, we expect them to resolve them rather quickly. And so we have to do our part, make sure, remain focused so we are actually ready when they are ready to operate. So we definitely, as a program, would like to see that from now on, starting in FY19, we're not to see anything less than that, to be able to keep up with what we're supposed to do. And that's definitely, otherwise we're not going to be able to support plant rates in the salt waste processing facility. And we are not going to be able to get done as soon as possible with the mission. So we definitely need to be supporting those kinds of numbers from now on. In FY19, based on the dispute resolution agreement that we signed with DHEC back in October of 2016, this year we're supposed to process 4.2 million gallons, I'm saying in FY19. With ARPMCU will continue operating until SWPF is ready to start operations. We also have the thicker technology, that tank closure system removal demonstration going, and we are supposed to complete. We should be completing the tank 10 FFA bulk waste removal efforts commitment based on the thicker demonstration. As far as the solid waste processing facility support for the first year, like I told you, we're going to be working with a lot of focus on that. We will be working about 11 tanks. I told you this year working about 4. So we are going to be working on more than double of the tanks that we are going to be, that we need, more than double of what we are used to work on, so we can prepare tanks for waste removal. We're going to be dissolving salt from one and preparing we're going to be designing facilities to prepare tanks for waste removal, and that's going to be a big effort this year. We're also going to continue on modifications in the different facilities to prepare for the operation of the solid waste processing facility and integrate the facilities with the project, or with the project when it starts up. And also, we are going to be implementing the Soulstone second shift. Soulstone facility right now works 4 days a week, 1 shift. So we're going to be increasing that to 2 shifts. So we're going to be hiring and training to be able to accommodate that. And also, we are going to be supporting the acceleration of the Soulstone Disposal Unit number 7 construction, and also SDUs 8 and 9, and the planning for 10 through 12. So I'm just giving you a little bit of detail here of what I just said to you. We're going to be operating ARPMCU. We'll continue operating until we are told that solid waste processing facility is ready to start. We're going to be processing sludge batches in DWPF, and then we're going to be processing sludge batches and then salt batches in ARPMCU. And we're also going to be completing the fabrication of the spare 3H evaporator pod. In FY18, and also with the increase, we are working on quite a bit of infrastructure, but in FY19, we're going to be working even more infrastructure. So we're going to finish the fabrication of the 3H evaporator. We're also going to continue working on the underground utilities. Those that went to the tour saw the work going on to support transferring the utilities from underground to above ground for ease of maintenance and repair. As far as the WPF, we'll be producing some canisters. The canisters, less is more. We want to make sure that the count of canisters is directly related to how much salt we're processing. That way, we have every canister is used to the maximum extent in terms of the loading of the sludge products, which is the actinides, and then the cesium from the salt. Oops. Let's see here. And we're also going to continue the melter 4 assembly and the canister double stacking operations. As far as the SWPF support projects, we'll continue, we'll be ready for the hot tie-ins with SWPF whenever they're ready. And we're going to continue work on the dry feeds for the Soulstone facility. And in DWPF, we're working some modifications to the lab waste handling and some other areas in the WPF. We're also going to be working on tank 41 to make it a second blend tank. That way we can be able to process, feed and process more than 6 million gallons in SWPF. And also, excuse me, in FY19 there's going to be also a big ramp up in the staffing. You were asking about that. We're going to be increasing the staffing so we can actually operate 24/7 in the Soulstone facility. So that's going to be a significant increase in the staff, the amount of staff for the contractor. Bulk waste removal, we're going to be dissolving salts out of tank 3. And like I told you, 11 tanks, right? So we're talking dissolving salt out of tank 3. We're going to be preparing tank 2, 14, 31. Initiate the field work on tanks 9, 27, 44. Well, I'm just going to, there's just going to be a lot of work going on. And that's the way it's going to remain for the next several years. That's why I'm telling you that we should not be looking back. This is FY19 is the beginning of what our program is going to look like. Let's see here. Supplemental salt initiatives, the tank closure cistern removal. We should be done with that demonstration and finish bulk waste removal efforts in tank 10. And complete the curb feasibility study, and a decision will be made with that study whether or not we continue operating that technology, using it in the tank farms for processing waste. And then Soulstone Disposal Unit and 8 and 9 will continue the construction of SDU 7 cell since the award of the contract for construction starts in 18, is going to be done in 18, hopefully. And we will complete the design and initiate construction of SDUs 8 and 9. So we are going to be really, really busy in FY19. So that's really what I have for you today as far as to show you the kinds of work that we're going to be doing in FY18 and 19. Are there any questions I can answer?
Let's start with Dawn.
Dawn Gillis-Cab. Thank you, Sonny. A little question first. On this last page, you have 47 canisters, and on a couple pages before, you have 50 canisters. I guess it's just to produce this year? So.
Yeah, the 50 canisters, and we had that goal of 50 canisters, is actually going to be in the 30s range. I'm giving you what the goal was from the beginning.
Okay.
As you know, we have had this outage. So operations are limited to the rest of the year. We just started resume operations in May. So of the 50 canisters, really, is probably going to be in the about 37 canisters. It all depends on how it works out with the salt processing.
Okay. One other question, and I'm not sure how much you can answer at this point, but the issues with the in SWPF with valve controllers, how's that going to affect all this work that you're wanting to do? Is it going to slow us down? And I know there's a question now about the December 18 startup date and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm glad that you asked that question, because I want to convey the message that we should not slow down the work in the program. Even if SWPF doesn't start in December and starts whenever they start in the next several months, because we were behind already. We had a shortfall in 17 of $49 million. We had the continuing resolution that took 6 months out of the fiscal year in 18. So now we are playing catch up. And it's going to take us quite a few months to do that. So basically, we just got a reprieve to be able to get to the point where we can fully support SWPF at plan rates. The good thing about this now is that when they get ready to operate, we'll be able to fully support them and not have to be holding back.
Okay, would you be able to, at the committee meeting, be able to give us a little bit more of an update of what's going on with SWPF, the controllers, and how that's going to actually affect that schedule?
And as soon as we are able, based on the evaluations going on, we'll be happy to report to you guys.
Don, that in July, Pam Marks will be here to give you an update on SWPF.
In general. Very good. Okay, thank you.
Let's go over to Dave.
Thank you for your presentation. In Mr. Lopez's presentation, he reminded us that the pension funds are embedded in each of the PBSs. When I look at what DOE sent to Congress, I see that in the liquid waste PBS 14C, the legacy pension is over $101 million out of your total budget of 900, or your budget request of $949, $949.4 million. That's over, I think between 10 and 11%. I think Tom French in his recommendation calls it a tax, the pension, a tax on the PBSs. I think that's a pretty steep tax, but that just shows you the magnitude of the pension issue.
Yes, and that remains a challenge for us to be able to balance out in the program what we can spend on the scope versus what we have to pay from the top to overheads, including the pension. You know, it approaches $100 million, the share of the liquid waste program, because it's the biggest program. So it is something that we have to handle every year. Any other questions?
Yep, looks like Narendra over here.
Narendra Malik, CAB. I have twofold question. Number one, if and when the new contractor comes in for liquid waste, will it delay the process, what we on the list which we have right now for the activities on the schedules?
The way that we plan contract transition and the requirements imposed on the new contractor and the current contractor, we are supposed to work towards a transparent transition without impacting the work in the field and program work. So no, I'm not expecting big impacts. We're working towards transitioning without the least amount of impact to the program.
My second question is for, I think I might be beating the dead horse. I've been asking this question for years about the Tank 48. I don't hear it. I know from 2003 to 2014 there was a lot of money spent on that, and all of a sudden the project was put on the shelf. And I know the benzene is not as much as we had it before. So why don't we proceed it and empty it out and make some room, extra room for the liquid waste storage?
Are you looking through a peephole or something to what we're doing?
Well, I'm just asking what the status is. I'm not.
We're getting ready here, actually, and I really have high hopes on getting really involved and ready to do something about the Tank 48 waste. We actually, in our plans moving forward, FY20 and beyond, we are looking at a couple of different technologies and hopefully gain some support from technology development standpoint to look again at what we have done in the past and a couple of other ideas moving forward. So remain tuned. We will be talking about Tank 48 in a short term.
One time there was a thought about getting industrial wastewater, industrial landfill, hazardous landfill for the disposal of the waste from Tank 48. And I know from calculations, original calculations, that the hazardous status will remain only for 90 days because the benzene will be depleted altogether. Have you been visiting those calculations back again?
Well, the way I understanding, and I do not know all the details, the way I understand is that we are not seeing hardly any production of benzene at this point. It remains pretty stable, so we have not seen any changes in that as far as that's concerned. And obviously that's information that will be used to determine what kind of disposition we're going to do with it. We're going to try to treat it, treat the waste to begin with.
I hope next time we hear about Tank 48 is a full presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Greg?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Blanco. Very informative. Now I'm going to ask the dumb questions as the new person, or one of the new person, particularly the non-technical new person. So on this, what is this one, number 3, we talk about the sludge, the salt cake, and the supernate. Now, so when we're talking about liquid waste, this is what we're talking about.
Yes.
Exactly. Are there any other forms of liquid waste that, when we talk about liquid waste disposal, we're talking about, or is this the full embodiment of it?
This is it.
And then it's going to these tanks, these 43 tanks, and I'm assuming it breaks up, whatever the technical term is for that, into these 3 types after it's been sitting there for a while. Is that right?
Yes. Well, from tank to tank, it may be different, but it's always whether if it is 2 of these kinds of waste or 1 kind of waste. There are certain tanks that we send the material from the canyon, and that becomes the sludge. So sometimes actually don't have sludge, or we are expecting not to find sludge, and they have pretty much only salt supernate. Some others, I did not speak about the process of evaporating the waste, and we do that. We evaporate liquid waste to gain space in the tanks. By removing the water, it becomes salt cake. It crystallizes because the SPG. Oh my gosh, what is SPG? I forget. Tell me again.
I think you're talking about specific gravity.
Exactly. Specific gravity increases and it crystallizes. So the tanks where we draw the liquid and run it through the evaporator and we deposit it back into the tank, we're gonna create the salt cake. So some tanks have salt cake and sludge, and even some supernate. Some other tanks have, the majority is salt supernate. So it depends on what we have done with the waste that is in that tank.
So it could come from H Canyon, in essence, in any of these forms, basically, right?
Well, when it comes from the canyon, a lot of it precipitates into sludge, and then we have the salt that stays at the top of the sludge. But yes, you're right. Yeah.
Okay.
And we also have, I did not speak about this, but when we process sludge, when we process the sludge to prepare it for DWPF, to be processed in DWPF, in the Defense Waste Processing Facility, and we wash that sludge, we're washing the salt out. So we're, in essence, creating some of this. Okay. And even then when evaporated, then we create some of that.
Okay.
And so in the whole process, we are dealing with salt and sludge the whole time.
Gotcha. And then, okay, so the liquid waste itself, and I'm sorry to ask the process questions, and I'll try not to get into too many details, because I don't know that much about it anyhow, so I couldn't get into too many details. But, so this is basically the residue of taking the spent nuclear fuel out.
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have the processing facilities that process all the salts, just special salt processing facilities that
That's
deal.
the ARPMCU,
Right.
and then the SWPF for the bigger capacity.
Okay, all right. That's very helpful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Don?
Dawn Gillis, Cab. It's not a question, but just a slight clarification. I think part of your question was, is there any other liquid waste? There is low-level waste that will come out of other facilities in a liquid form as it comes out, but that has to be processed in order to be disposed of, and it'll end up as a solid, so that ends up in the solid waste, but that's different from the liquid waste program.
Okay, all right. Thank
So
you.
I confused things anyway.
Okay, well, I apologize for that. Yeah.
I think that's kind of what your question was. Is that the only liquid waste we
right.
have
Yeah,
on
that's
site?
what I was trying to
And
get
it's not 100% true. That's the big problem is this, but we do have other little streams. They now.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Sunny? Thank you. Okay, since we stretched it out, I'm going to go ahead and give you your break. Can we come back at 3 o'clock, everybody in our seats?
Yeah.
All right, 3 o'clock, everybody in your seats. Thank you. Get started with our next presentation. We have the U.S. Forest Service and Nabila Clark.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Good afternoon. How's everyone? I know last year, this is like my second or third time doing this camp presentation, and I must say last year they put me at the end and I kind of ran over into the latter part of the meeting, and I brought my public affairs officer with me, Tammy Robinson, to keep me on track. My presentation today, she said, just hit the highlights, don't get into too much detail, so I'm going to try to do that. And since I've been here, I learned a lot by attending these meetings, and every time I come away with something to prepare for the next year. And so far, I know next year, looking at Maxine's presentation, the video was a very nice touch. Maybe I'll do a video with some of our employees sharing some information with you at next year's. And then I was talking to Mr. Hilton, and he said, well, you're with the U.S. Forest Service. He wanted to know that I bring any Smokey Bear coloring books. So I'll try to do that for you next year. So definitely, again, I'm Davila Clark, Forest Manager on site, and definitely a pleasure to be here with you again. Got a little bit of information I want to share with you. Of course, you understand why we're here. We do this annually and going to be sharing some good information with you. So got a few interesting facts that we like to share. You know, on site we have on our staff approximately anywhere on our organization we have from 70 to 75 positions of hard-working, dedicated employees who are excellent at what they do. And the different programs that we have, you all may be familiar with visiting a national forest. We're very similar to a national forest. We have pretty much everything you would find on a national forest, with the exception of having staff in recreation, of course, because we're closed off to the public. But that includes, we have a program in engineering, natural resources, which encompasses timber and wildlife. We also have fire staff. We also have an admin operations group, and we have, of course, public affairs. Tammy wants me to expand that group. Is just one person right now, but we'll work on that. And then we have, of course, research, and those are the programs that we have on our staff. As far as management, we manage on site. We have our forest is approximately 170,000 acres, and one thing that we're known for on the site with our staff is that we promote and practice active management on that 170,000 acres. What gives us direction? Of course, we have an interagency agreement with our partner, DOE. Have a strong relationship there where the interagency agreement is in place for annually about 5 years. We do those every 5 years. We'll renew that agreement. But as far as the management of the forest, we get our direction and guidance from what we call the Natural Resource Management Plan. And that breaks up that 170,000 acres into different management areas, and we have goals and objectives that we strive for to create that future desired condition for those particular management areas, and that drives our operations. So a lot of active management. Some other things that we're also that we are responsible for as well is controlling the nuisance animal populations on site. And as you can see there, it breaks down about the different management areas. And I'll talk more about the various programs and the red cockaded woodpecker here in a second, and our prescribed burning activities, and also our management of the secondary roads and other things that we do for the Department of Energy while managing the site. And also, I'm going to share in this presentation, we're going to have a lot of good information. A lot of the work, what I want for you all to understand, we're responsible for a lot, but none of the work that we do could not be accomplished if we were not collaborating, working with the other entities on site, also working with agencies and conservation agencies and NGOs off-site to help with our management activities. And we'll touch on a few of those here in my presentation. Wanted to put this in here, of course. Like I said, we have a staff of about 70 to 75 employees, and in everything we do, we put safety first. And as you can imagine, working in a forested setting, a lot of our employees, some of the positions require us to be in an indoor setting and work in an office, but the majority of our work takes place out on the forest, and a lot of the staff do a lot of work in some remote areas, but, oh, I hit the thing. So the thing is that we always put safety first. Our employees do a great job of staying safe. Here, as you can see, it says we drove a high number of miles on site, carrying out our activities. But what you can understand is that you would think of that being on a gravel paved road, but this is backcountry that we're riding on. So that's a rough 259,000 miles that our employees are driving over. But they do a great job and put safety first. And like some of the other presenters said, our top priority is to make sure that our employees go home safe and they go home the way that they came in and in a safe manner and can be there for their families. So we're proud of the work that they do. So some of the things I wanted to touch on is our management of the red-cockaded woodpecker, and I'll just share a little bit of history with you on where we've come with the red-cockaded woodpecker. Pre-European settlement back, they said that there were about, whoa, it's going automatically, okay. Pre-European settlement, there was about of habitat suitable for RCW, which is large timber, open forest canopy with a grassy understory, regularly burned on an annual basis. In the southeast, where the range for the red-cockaded woodpecker, they estimate that the population of red-cockaded woodpeckers pre-European settlement was somewhere around 1 to 1.5 million groups or clusters. And a group or cluster is about average, it could be one bird, one RCW, but on average you're looking at about 2 to 4 birds per cluster at a minimum. So way back pre-European settlement, there were about 1 to 1.5 million groups available. And there was about 60 million acres of suitable habitat, this large timber, open understory with a grassy understory, regularly burned. They said the suitable habitat was somewhere around 60 million acres. Well, since that time, they said in the early 90s, I think the latest population estimate, they were thinking now, well, I'll go back into 1973 when it became listed as a threatened and endangered species. They estimated that the population of RCWs were down to about 10,000 individuals, not groups, but just birds. So as you can see, there was a need for us to take action and to preserve the species. So since that time, since it being listed as endangered back in 1973, the latest we've looked at, they're estimating that the populations are somewhere around, I think it's about 14,000, 16,000 birds in the southeast, and the habitat is somewhere around 3 million acres of suitable habitat. So we went from 1 to 1.5 all the way down to about just a couple thousand RCWs. And what we shared here with you is through our management activities, where we stand currently on our site, we have about a population of about 556 birds. And when I was looking at this presentation, like I said, I've been doing this a couple years now, and I remember at least 2 years ago, the figures that we had that I shared with you all, at that time we were at about 460 RCWs 2 years ago. So through our management activities, this doesn't show it, but since 1986, our population trends have been steadily inclining and on the uptake. And like I said, over the course of 2 years, we've added to our population roughly about 100 RCWs, and we're proud of that. Some of the things that we've done, this also touches on where we've had birds translocated from other populations, in particular from Florida, that were translocated and added to our population. For us to become a donor, that's what we're striving towards and what we're working towards.
In order for us to be a donor, what we're looking at, we'd have to have a minimum of 250 clusters. So we're currently at 131. So we're on the incline. So hopefully in a number of years from now, that's what we're striving for, where we can become a donor population and we can hit that 250 cluster threshold. Some of the other things, like I said, we don't do this alone. We partner with a lot of agencies and other entities. And one of the things that we recently did is that we were also assisted with the Hitchcock Woods. We translocated a number of birds, not from our population, but there were some birds that were translocated, I think, from Florida to that forest. That is an urban forest in the Aiken area that is open to the public. And one of the things that we're doing through our RCW management, we're learning a lot and we're sharing that knowledge and expertise with other agencies and other entities. And we're proud to have been a partner with the Hitchcock Woods and assisting them with translocating some RCWs to their 2,000-acre forest and helping them increase the populations in the surrounding area. Along those lines, we're also partnering with other agencies and also working with private landowners. We're part of a large initiative. We're part of the USDA, Department of Agriculture, and our Secretary of Agriculture has given us an initiative to work with on private lands as well to help spread the RCW habitats, make it more suitable for RCWs. So we're part of what they're calling a 1 million acre a year mission to create more suitable habitat for the RCWs. So annually within the Southeast, on private and on public lands, we're looking at trying to increase our suitable habitat by 1 million acres annually, and hopefully in the near future and years to come, get us back to working towards that 60 million acres that we had pre-European settlement. So we're proud of that. Also, like I said, we practice active management, and on an annual basis, we harvest about 7 million cubic feet of timber, and that equates to about $5 million worth of timber annually. And what we do, that is driven by, like I mentioned before, our natural resources management plan, where I don't want you all to get the impression that we go out and we high grade and that we target the most desirable species to generate revenue to cover our costs. What this is, what the timber that we're harvesting, like I said, the management plan gives us direction on how we can improve our management activities and to create a desired future condition, create a healthy forest for wildlife and for our publics. And through those management activities, the species that we target are normally the undesirable species. So these are the timber that's probably reached its threshold, its lifespan, where it's about to start dying out, or it's got some cankers or twisted tops or things of that nature. We're removing those undesirable species, leaving the healthy, vigorous trees for wildlife purposes and things of that nature. So what this 7 million cubic feet is just a byproduct of those undesirable species being removed annually from our site. So I just wanted to point that out. Also, as part of our management is prescribed burning. And annually, last year, we were able to conduct about 27 prescribed burns for a total of 7,158 acres. Normally, and this is to promote, like I talk about that suitable habitat for the red cockaded woodpecker. That is definitely something that is required for suitable habitat for the RCW. Frequently burned areas, open areas that are large in timber size and have a low competition from the vegetation in the understory. So on average, we normally burn, we have targets, and our annual target is normally around 20,000 acres. So last year we had a down year. It was, we went from one extreme, we had a wet season, then we hit the extreme and went extremely dry during the summer. One of the things that we have to do is have ideal conditions for conducting these prescribed burns. And it's one of the most dangerous things that we do, and we want to have the right conditions for whenever we set these fires. A lot of planning goes into preparing for these burns, and of course, one of the things that also goes along with reducing these hazardous fuels is also the smoke management. And I know that we've shared a lot of information with you all regarding smoke management in the past. There's been a lot of questions around what goes into the planning. Tammy's been working closely with our fire staff to do a better job, for us to do a better job of notifying the public when we're going to be burning and making people aware of what impacts may result if there are impacts from smoke, dispersed smoke. And one of the things that we're doing is we put things into place where we're going to have on a website, I think we're going to post information about where the burns are being conducted. We're gathering information from the surrounding communities and the residents in the area so that they'll be notified the day of the burns and given a heads up if there may be a potential for smoke impacts. And that's been well received. We're doing a better job at notifying the public, and that's something we're going to continue to do. But again, you know, this touches on our prescribed burn. That's the most cost-effective management when it comes to reducing hazardous fuels, where we get our biggest bang for the buck. But we also do a small component of mechanical treatments to reduce hazardous fuels as well. We have what we call a masticator, where we'll go out and this machine will grind up the understory vegetation to reduce the fuel levels and grind up the down trees that may, you know, when you burn, may pucker and smolder and burn for days on end. On average, we do. That can be quite expensive, but we do a lot of that in-house. We have the equipment on hand to do that. Probably about 10 years ago, we would do a couple thousand acres a year, but since we've gotten things under better control and doing a regular cycle of burning, the fuel levels have come down by us burning on regular intervals. We're not having to do as much mechanical treatment, so now we've went from doing a couple thousand acres of mechanical treatment annually to now doing somewhere around 200 to 250 acres annually with the mechanical treatment. So wanted to share that. Another project that we have that's been ongoing is our pollinator habitat support. As you all may be aware, pollinators have been on the decline, and we're trying to look for ways to improve those populations. We, on average, 3,500 acres of forest are annually thinned. And we were planting, you know, small areas. These pollinators prefer open areas. Out in the open, a lot of these pollinators provide plants. They require germination, and they have to be pollinated to reproduce and spread. So these pollinators are very important to us. So some of the things that we talk about in our thinned areas, you know, since they're like open areas, we decided that in these areas where we have our logging decks, where we bring the timber to the deck and they load the trucks and things of that nature, these are areas that are about, you know, probably about the size of this room, quarter of an acre or so, and then they're open. Instead of just letting them naturally revegetate, we've been planting pollinators in these open areas and have had some success. So since 1994, native grass plugs have been planted annually, ranging anywhere from 20,000 to 130,000 plugs in these open areas. So we're proud of that. And like I touched on earlier, pretty much, as you can see, all of our activities, we collaborate and work with other entities on site and also with our publics. Just to name a few, I'm not going to try to name all of them because I'm sure I'll forget someone, but all of the entities on site, we do a great deal of work, and they partner with us on a lot of the work that we're able to accomplish. And this thing is rolling forward automatically. But we work closely with other entities on site, and they help us with our management activities, and also what I'll touch on here in a minute, a lot of research. We focus a lot on doing a lot of cutting-edge research on site for not only for us to help with our management activities, but for other state and private forests, for other forests out on the national forests across the southeast in our region, for them to learn from our activities and implement the best practices on the ground. And these partners work closely with us on those efforts. Research. We do quite a bit of research, anything ranging here. We have some recent research that we've been conducting with our coyotes. We've been working on this probably about 5 to 6 years, and last year we were able to publish some information from the research we've recently done. What we noticed was what spurred this for us to take this on was that about 5 to 6 years ago, we realized that our fawn population of deer were on the decline. We had a low number of fawns, and of course, you know, the coyote eat the young of the deer. And so we wanted to do a study and look at removing some coyotes from the area. By removing these coyotes, we wanted to see what effect that would have on our fawn populations. And what we learned is that in the general area where we removed the coyotes and took them out, there was a slight correlation with the population of fawns. It wasn't much, didn't make much of a difference. Like I said, we've just been doing this for about 5 to 6 years. But what we learned, we thought that it would keep these coyotes, the populations down in these areas where we were taking them out. But what we've been learning in this research is that the coyotes from outside of the area where we took them out moved in pretty quickly after we removed them, and it didn't have much of an effect on the coyote population in that area. They just moved right back in. They reproduced and didn't have much of an effect on it. But we're continuing with this research. No specific conclusions or anything definite from this research. We're continuing with it, but we're learning as we go. And like I said, a lot of this work is being conducted, like you can see here. We work a lot with the University of Georgia, SREL, Auburn University, the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, just a whole suite of partners working with us, not only on this research, but on other research as well. Some of the other things that we have research on going on is regarding our wild hogs, our feral hogs, and currently we have some research that's been going on with the wild hogs. We're looking at the different types of trappings. We have some that we're looking at the different mechanisms, the different types of mechanical treatments. You know, we have the old traps that are triggered by that are triggered by a tripwire, where the hog just goes in and goes after the food and just hits it and trips it. The door closes and then it's trapped. We also have what we call smart devices, where from an iPhone, our wildlife staff there's a camera that's put on the trap, and they can remotely control the door, when to drop the door. There's a camera on the trap, so they're notified it's on a motion sensor, so they can see the hogs as they approach, and they can see which hogs are in there, and if there's more in the area that may go in, and they can control when to raise and close the door to trap the hogs. And they're looking at those different types of trappings and trying to see which ones is having more of an impact on our wild hog population. And like I said, we've just started that research, and hopefully we'll have more information on which is more effective in the next couple of years. But since 2005, we've removed about 9,000 feral hogs from site, and of course they create a lot of damage to the soils, a lot of vehicle-animal collisions based on the wild hogs. We do a lot of work trying to keep these wild hogs out of our cap areas. The capped areas, we maintain those, but of course, you know, if they get inside the fence and do damage there, it can unstabilize the soil, and we don't want that to occur in these capped areas. So we do a great job of trying to keep them under control. We're continuing to work with the Southern Research Station and SREL to look into more research opportunities, to learn more on our management and seeing what's effective with controlling these nuisance animals. Another project that we currently have ongoing right now is our roughness buffer project. And I don't know all the particulars of this, so I'm going to just hit the highlights. But what I understand is that, of course, around the National Lab facility, they have emissions that come from that facility. And part of the requirement is that we have a roughness buffer or a forested canopy that absorbs a certain percentage of those emissions in the forest. So we have to have a certain percentage of canopy in the surrounding area around the nuclear facility. And so one of the things that we had been doing, we hadn't been practicing much active management. You know, we talk about active management and creating a healthy, vigorous forest. We've been doing that throughout the site. But in particular in this area alone, we had kind of taken a hands-off approach and figured, well, we want the trees just to grow and be there. And we worked with our foresters, and we decided that may not be the best approach. We may want to create active management in this area. The stands were starting to become mature and starting to die out. We were concerned that if we have an even age class around the site in this forest type, you know, it could be vulnerable to disease and insects like a beetle. If we hadn't been thinning properly in the area as a closed canopy where the beetles would spread a lot faster and could wipe out the whole area in a matter of time. So we've come up with a management plan. We're working closely with the SRNL staff to come up with a management plan where we're not, you know, treating the whole area at once, but we're doing thinnings and things of that nature and creating a more suitable habitat where in the event that something would happen, we'd always have a wide variety of age classes in this area, different age classes of timber to withstand a natural event or a disease or insect infestation. And with this, if something came in and wiped this area out around this facility, we learned that without the canopy being there to absorb these emissions, SRNL would have to upgrade their stacks and put filtration systems in place. And what they estimate, they said that this would cost about $50 million to upgrade these facilities if the timber wasn't there to absorb these emissions. So of course, you know, active management is critical to this. We don't want to be in that situation, so we're working closely with the SRNL staff to create a healthy, vigorous forest around that facility. And we're just starting on that. We're planning to start timber harvesting this fiscal year, and we'll be carrying that out over the next course of the 2 to 3 years. So we have that. Other things that we're responsible for, of course, the roads. We have over 1,200 miles of secondary roads, and like I said, we're the primary entity responsible for that maintenance and service to those roads, but of course, we work closely with site infrastructure who provide us support in helping keeping these roads cleared and open and in a stable situation. And we also have 70 miles of wellness trail. We're responsible for keeping those trails open, provides recreation activities for the personnel on site to enjoy these trails. We do a lot of trail maintenance on that. We also do boundary maintenance. I forget how many miles of boundary we have, but it's a large number of miles that we maintain around the site, and we're responsible for keeping it posted as well. So we do a lot of that as well. Another thing that I wanted to touch on and share with you is a lot of our community outreach. This is one of the things that we're very proud of, is our community outreach and recruitment efforts. Some of the things that we're doing currently, we're trying to find ways, you know, in the field of natural resources, there's a lot of different professions and opportunities within our organization, and we're working to work with our youth and bring more people into the field of natural resource management. One of the things we recently are taking on is that we've formed a timber apprenticeship program. We're working with the Job Corps facility out of North Carolina, where they have a natural resource program where these youth come in and they learn about natural resource management. They go through the timber program, they learn about timber management. What we're doing is bringing them on board, and they do work for us as a volunteer. And in this program, they have to work, I think it's about 1,200 hours of volunteer service, where they'll come through and they'll leave our program as a certified timber marker. And what this will do is give them status. It's the Public Land Corps to give them status to be able to apply for merit-only, you know, positions that are not open to the general public. They're like a Forest Service employee. They can compete for our internal positions for about, I think it's about 2 months. Once they get a certificate, they can have status like they're a federal employee and apply for federal jobs with us. We've just started this. We brought in, I think, about 4 students this past year. They've been with us now for about 4 months. And since they've been with us, 2 of them have been placed in permanent jobs, and the other 2 are looking to compete. I'm sure they'll compete well. They're looking to apply for jobs with us. Some other things that we're doing is also getting into our schools. Tammy is leading our work with the Youth Corps Conservation Group, where we're going to be going into some of the high schools where we're targeting some of the youth to come and work on our forests, and over the course of a summer, where they'll get exposed and experience in the different programs and hopefully spark their interest to pursue a career opportunity in the field of natural resources, or maybe even go on to college and study forestry or something in the lines of natural resource management. This will be the first year that we're doing this, so we're proud of that. Tammy's heading that up. We also work closely with a lot of the universities. Since we practice active management, we bring these students on where they get hands-on the job training and experience to help them for whenever they pursue their jobs once they graduate. And we're just looking for more opportunities to get into the schools. We're getting into the grade schools, teaching them about conservation ed and things of that nature. We're dedicating staff to doing more of that and really just get into the community and provide support and make them aware of all of the opportunities that we have on site and things that are happening, and come and share with them opportunities to learn and to experience natural resource management. And so those are some of the main things that we wanted to share with you, is that community outreach and recruitment activities that we have ongoing. And in closing, of course, like I said, we're always striving to not only bring people in from the outside to learn, and we're also doing the same for our employees. A lot of our jobs, in order for our staff to be able to compete and move up within our organization by giving them training opportunities, working, you know, a timber person working over in fire and cross training. It helps them compete and move up within our organization, and we're looking for more opportunities not only to do that for our publics, but also for our employees, and that's been well served. We have a lot of turnover on our unit. Like I said, we have about 70 to 74 employees, but on average, we usually have annually somewhere about 20 vacancies because people are moving up and moving into other positions. So we want to continue doing that. And we're also going to continue to provide exceptional customer service to our publics. We're always open and available to look for more opportunities to partner with our publics. So if you all have opportunities and ways that we can partner, we serve on committees and things of that nature to help NGOs compete for grants and fundings and things of that nature. So if there's any opportunities that we can partner, or you got some ideas, that we're willing and committed to partnering and doing more of that and helping bring more dollars into the local area. And we're also going to continue to do more active forest management to create a healthy and vigorous forest. So with that, that's pretty much my presentation. And I was talking to James about, I know I get a lot of questions usually when I come, but usually I have my staff with me to answer all the detailed questions, but I'm kind of with Tammy today, so if I can't answer all of your questions, we'll definitely get back with you and get with the specialists back on the site to follow up. But with that, I'll see if you have any questions for me.
Let's start with Doug over here.
Okay.
Doug Howard Cab. Great presentation. I've got a few questions for you on the, I think it's the fourth slide or it's the fourth page on my handout here. Okay. On your, the breakdown on the injuries, yes. You said you only had one injury over the entire past year. Mm-hmm. What was that injury from?
As I best recall, last year it was more, we had a ladder incident where there was a gentleman climbing up a ladder, changing out a bulb on our dozer, and he didn't use the right equipment. He used a wrench, and when he pulled it, it broke, and he fell off of the ladder and came down on his back and injured his back, and he hit the wheel of the tractor plow and cracked his jaw as well. Mm. So and since that situation, we've developed, we've gotten a cab where they can get in a cage and go and change things out. But we did a stand down and we did a thing on ladder safety. They weren't using the right equipment for that type of job. And it also required us to check all of our ladders. The other thing that we learned about the ladder, it wasn't suitable to hold his weight. I think the maximum weight that was supposed to go up on the ladder was somewhere around 120 pounds, and he was about 200 pounds. So we inspected all of our ladders, and that's one of the things that we try to do once in the unfortunate event that we have an accident, is that we create an environment where we're learning from it and not trying to come down hard on the employee for having an accident. We learn from it and try to prevent anything like that from happening in the future and put things into place that'll reduce the likelihood of that. But usually things that are not reportable or recordable, that we get a lot of insect bites, poison oak, poison ivy, those types of things. We get a lot of those with the employees going out into the forest, and stumps and twisted ankles and things of that nature, stepping into a stump hole. Those are usually the common injuries that we have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you said you usually have about 20 vacancies.
Yeah,
most of the time?
On average, correct.
How does the Forestry Service, how do they assign your personnel? I mean, is that... Yeah,
when we have a vacancy, it's kind of like I shared with you, that we're looking for cross-training opportunities for our employees. So we have a lot of vacancies, and when we're not filling them, what we'll usually do is we'll do a detail where we'll temporarily reassign someone into those positions. A lot of times we'll work within our workforce. We'll give them first opportunities to cross-train and be developed if there's any interest locally. But a lot of time, if there's not, we'll use resources off forest and bring someone in and detail them into that vacancy until we fill it and do a detail, for an individual.
The the feral hogs.
Yes.
Once you all, I guess, capture them and do your thing, I mean, what happens with them afterwards?
They'll euthanize them and they'll dispose of them there on site. We don't take them off site or anything like that. They'll capture them and then they'll dispose of them.
And you know they can be eaten, right?
Yeah.
People eat
True,
them.
yeah.
Yeah. They're very
I don't know
lean.
yeah, but they may be contaminated, so.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. All right.
But I do like some pork myself.
Yeah. But last question, box elder bugs. Do you all have problems with those?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Box elder bugs?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
If we have much box elder on site, it wouldn't be much. So I'm not aware of us having that as a problem on site. But we can follow up to confirm that for you.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Narinder?
Narendra Malakab, thank you very much for the
Thank you.
very interesting presentation. You mentioned about the corridor around SRNL of trees.
Yes.
First question is, how far you have to maintain that corridor? How many feet away from the?
It's just across the road from it, so just a couple thousand feet away. It's in the close proximity to that facility, yeah.
And when you remove any trees from that corridor, do you monitor the biomass for radioactivity in it?
At this time, we are not, but that may be something that we could look into. At this time, we're planning to just go ahead and treat it as we do with the other timber off-site and go ahead and remove it.
The reason I ask is because it's so close to the exhaust from the SRNL, and there could be possibility of any radioactivity release. But I know from surety that the release from SRNL stack is very small, maybe minuscule.
Yeah.
But possibility
But it's something we could look into. I think there's been conversations about that and looking at if we would stockpile some or if we would commercially remove it. But that's something I could follow up to get a definite answer for you if that is something that we would be looking to do. Thank you for the question.
Bobby Williams, CAP.
Yes.
How many logging companies do you have on site?
We have roughly, when we bid ourselves, we probably have anywhere from 7 to 8 loggers who normally bid on our timber sales. One of them, well, I should say 2 to 3 of them are large companies that do a lot of subcontracting, probably including subcontractors. You're looking at anywhere between 10 to 15 loggers handling our sale activities on site.
And my next question is, do you still harvest coyotes during deer hunting season?
Yes, we do. Yes. Excellent question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David?
Dave Isley, CAB.
Yes.
Help you out with his question about the trees.
Okay.
You said that the trees are absorbing things from the facility. That's absolutely not true.
Oh, okay.
It's a surface roughness that's calculated in analytical space. They're taking advantage of the trees for diffusion of a release, and the money saved is equipment they would have to install in a more severe accident. So
I got you.
a parking lot versus trees help you in analytical space, not in absorbing anything.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for that. All right.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Clark? Really, I put him at the end of the day because last year y'all wanted to hammer him. Okay.
All right. Well, they know I didn't bring my wildlife biologist. Usually they're asking me about the wildlife and things of that nature, but always a pleasure to come, and thank you all again for allowing us to come and share with you. But I mean that if there are opportunities for us to partner and work with you all, we're open to that, and I'm available. I have cards with me, and Tammy has some as well. If you need our contact information, we welcome that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so I went and checked on the public comment sign up a little bit ago. There was no one signed up. Does anyone want to make a public comment? Going once, going twice? Okay. That's written. We'll do that later. That's separate. Okay. So with that, are we ready to move into voting for the day? How do you feel about it, Gil? You ready to process some votes? All right. So what we'll do is we'll run in the order they are on the agenda. Your vote clickers are up under your name tags or your nameplates. So if you go ahead and pull those out. And Chelsea, if you'll pull up the first vote. And Gil, let's get started.
The first vote, well, do we have to get a motion or are we good? Is there a motion to close recommendation 336, waste management milestones? I have a motion from Tom French, a second from Narinder Malik. A yes vote is going to be a yay vote is going to be to close it. A nay vote is to not close it. Abstain means you don't have a position. Please don't vote abstain. I'm just joking. It's an option. So do we need any discussion on this closing? Sensing no discussion, call the vote. Chelsea, are we good?
She's going to give her just a second.
We were ready.
Now try it?
Nope.
No, you'll probably have to pull that down and restart it.
Raise your hand.
Give her just a second.
You know, I just bragged, and Doug and I bragged in New Mexico that this was the greatest thing since sliced bread.
There it is. Okay. One more.
Does Mary have one under hers?
No, hers wouldn't be counted on this.
If you look on the back of your voting, it will tell you what number you are. And if you're number 12, don't tell anybody. There, we're full.
There it went. Okay. So everybody's happy with their votes? All right. 100%.
So, motion to close recommendation 336, waste management milestones, has passed. Moving on to close recommendation 346, drone spotting over SRS. Kind of funny since we're talking about having drones. Do I have a motion to close recommendation 346, drone spotting over SRS? I have a motion from Tom French. Do I have a second? I have a second from Doug Howard. Any discussion on closing drone spotting over SRS? Sensing no discussion. Chelsea, are we ready?
Almost, she says. There it went. Okay, go for it.
Nope.
It's counting them but not showing it. So we have 14, 15, one more?
I don't know.
Okay, that's all 16.
All 16 are voted? Oh, it just shows you up there?
Yep.
Okay, so
I don't
we're
know why
good?
it didn't highlight.
Well, yeah. Okay. Vote is closed. It is unanimous. We have voted to close recommendation 346, drone spotting over Savannah River site. Moving on to recommendation 350, the opposed receipt of German spent nuclear fuel for treatment and storage in the U.S. Do I have a motion to close recommendation 350? I have Narinder Malik with the motion. Do I have a second? I have, who do I have? Bob? Okay. Got Bob with the second. Any discussion? Wow, nobody in nuclear materials wants to have a conversation about this here. Well, it was a lively debate at nuclear materials. I thought we may get a conversation on this one. Sensing no discussion, I call the vote. Okay, voting is closed.
94% to 6%.
94% votes to close. We have decided to close recommendation 350, oppose receipt of German spent nuclear fuel for treatment and storage in the United States. Moving on to budget, pension, and scope recommendation. Do I have a motion to motion from Narendra Malik? Second? I have a second from Dave. Discussion, and I'm going to turn it over to Tom. Any discussion? Tom, I'll let you lead the discussion if there is discussion on this motion. Is there any discussion on this motion? So, Tom, do you want to say anything before we vote?
Just one thing.
To the mic, please. To the microphone.
Sorry, Tom French Cab. Just so everybody knows, John helped yesterday, and we went in and did all the numbers so that they're accurate as of yesterday. So we upgraded the whole document.
So the budget, the projected numbers are current as of yesterday? Okay, great. So we have the motion, we have the second. I call the vote for the budget, pension, and scope recommendation. Are we ready, Chelsea? Okay.
Okay, that's all 16.
Okay, let's see the results. Voting's closed. All right. Wow. I'm very happy to see that one pass unanimously. Thank you. Now we shift gears a little bit. Everything we just voted on was specifically for Savannah River. Now we're going to vote upon the Environmental Management Site-Specific Advisory Board recommendation regarding the Energy Community Alliance report on waste disposition. Do I have a motion to move to a vote on this? Doug Howard with the motion, Don Gillis with the second. Again, there's nothing we can do to this. Does anyone have any questions they would like to ask before we vote? Sensing no discussion. Chelsea, are we good to vote? Now, the yay vote on this is that we agree with it. The nay vote is we disagree with it. So, yay if you agree with the recommendation and believe that the EMSSAB all chairs board should move this forward to DOE, or nay if you do not agree with it and the EMSSAB board, if all chairs board would not move it forward. So, yay or nay? Voting's open. You guys were already voting before I said that.
Only one more. There it is.
All right. All the voting is in. What's the result? And we all passed it. Wonderful. Great job, Cab, on the votes. And with that, James, turn it back to you, and you'll probably turn it back to me.
So, folks, do we have any more lingering questions on any topics that we had come up today? Anything that we need to resolve before we close it out? There you go. Don? You had one.
Don Gillis Cab. Sonny, got one more for you on your overall plan of that shows where everything's going to go from liquid waste. The one that still says TBD is the resin columns from Ticker. And there was a brief mention about that during the tour. And I don't know if you have any more to say about where those columns would go or what you would do with those. And if you don't have the information now, then if we can make sure that that gets covered in the committee meeting.
Right now, the columns are planned for storage on a pad, and we are looking at being able to send them to a vendor. Ultimately, if that's not successful, we would be sending the resin to the WPF. But that's definitely something that has not been determined at this point.
Okay. If we could just make sure that kind of keep us up to tabs as what's going on with that as time goes by. Appreciate it.
Okay. No problem.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Dave?
What do you want us to do with these? Just leave them on?
Leave it there up under your nameplate, please. Anything else? Any other questions? Any parting words?
Yeah.
Gil?
When's the next meeting and where is it? I was trying to look it up. I just didn't have time before you came back.
July in Augusta.
It's July in Augusta. Okay. Before we adjourn, I just want to say thank you to all the presenters. It was a great slate of presenters. To all the presenters, to our points of contact, thank you very much. I appreciate all the in-depth conversation. To members of the Department of Energy that took time out of your schedule to come, thank you very much. And once again, great job, CAP support, James, Delisa, I know you're not support, but Frederica, hi Frederica. Yeah. And everybody who wants to know, when that lady, lovely lady, when Narinder and Don were talking behind them, that's Frederica. That's Frederica. And we also have, and thank you, Chelsea. I believe it was a really nice stay here in Savannah. Thank you very much. And the committee meetings will be coming up next month. Please make CAB members make every effort to be at the committee meetings. I anticipate some really good committee meetings in June. There's going to be some good discussions. We're going to be talking about some things that we want to move forward with in every committee. The executive committee met yesterday morning and had a very good conversation about some things that each committee wants to discuss. So please make every attempt to be at the committee meetings in June, and I would be surprised if we don't see some recommendations. Well, we know some recommendations are coming out of Waste Management because Dawn's going to take care of them before she goes to Florida. She gave us that whole explanation yesterday. But I think we'll see some recommendations come out. Before we leave, I want something a little lighthearted. I've had the opportunity now to know Doug for a year and a half. I've traveled with him. I've sat next to him. But I didn't think I'd ever say, when you catch the feral hogs and you do your thing. That was one of the funniest things I think I've ever heard you say, and you do your thing. All right. I appreciate everyone. I look forward to seeing you in June, and please be safe going home to wherever you go. Meeting adjourned.